Thanks for tuning in. I'm sure more people will kind of filter in as the session goes on. Um, I'm happy that you're here to learn and discuss about reads, which I'm using my salesman voice there because it's not the most glamorous topic, but an important one nonetheless. And let me just be sure that I am recording. Okay, good. Um, so today we're talking about reads. And For those of you who don't know me, my name is Professor Bergen. I am the professor of saxophone here at Lone Star College Montgomery. I'm known as Mr. Bergen to all my private lesson students. I also teach in the Houston area as well. Um, and yeah, so let's jump right in. So the first thing to think about when you're dealing with reads is how to store them. In my mind, any good read storage system should accomplish essentially two things. The first thing is it should essentially provide stability from the outside elements. Whether it's dropping, being shuffled around, um, humidity, weather, all that kind of stuff. So a good read case is going to give your reads sort of their own little environment that's separate from the outside world. And the second thing that any good read storage system should provide is obviously protection for your reads. You want to be sure that they're not just loosely uh, floating around in a backpack or something, because then you're going to end up with a bunch of chipped reads, and that's expensive and no fun. So I think the first thing I should do is show you how I store my reads. Um, I've been through a lot of different storage kind of products in my life. Some expensive, some not, and this is where I'm at right now. So this is a tackle box that I bought from Walmart for, I don't know, $7 or so. Um, and the reason I chose a tackle box is because tackle boxes are designed to be waterproof, right? So if you're out fishing, you drop it in the lake, it's not going to sink, and you lose all of your, various whatever. I'm not a fisherman, so I don't know. But it's designed to be waterproof, and if it's waterproof, it's also airtight. So in lovely Houston weather, that is cold one day and warm the next, and muggy and hot and then not. This is an airtight environment for my reeds, so that they aren't necessarily exposed to all those changes in weather. So opening it up here, I've got a few reeds, just a few. The other thing I like about this the tackle box is that I can kind of like compartmentalize things. I've got my alto reeds here, tenor, soprano. I've got some unopened reeds in this part, and I've got some tools and stuff here. So it's kind of a combination reed box, and also I guess you could consider it maybe a better term would be gig box, because I can take it on a gig, and if I have multiple saxophones, I've got everything I need in here in one place. One drawback to this is that it is kind of bulky, so it's not like something I can just put in my pocket or something. But I'm willing to accept that trade-off, because I feel like it accomplishes what I want it to do. In line with that first thing I said about providing a stable kind of environment, these packs right here, super, super helpful. These are humidity packs, and essentially they release moisture. The package that it's in is semi-porous, so it releases moisture, and it keeps the air inside my tackle box at 72% humidity at all times. Fun fact: these are actually for cigar boxes. I don't smoke cigars, but you can use these for reeds, and it'll keep your humidity stable. If you've ever played a reed instrument, you know that sometimes you pull the reed out of its little sleeve, and the tip of it just looks kind of waffly. That's usually because the humidity has changed, right? So you'll see that even though these are in the sleeves, when I pull them out, they're pretty much straight on. I don't know if you can see that or not, but very, very little to no waffling of the tip of the reed. So those humidity packs do a really great job of keeping the environment stable. If you don't want to go this route, that's understandable. Like I said, it's kind of bulky. I highly recommend the D'Addario reed cases that open and shut like this. I think they're about $25. They do a pretty good job. They close shut. They have a little slot for one of these packs, and they also kind of press the reed against a plastic surface to keep it flat and try to prevent any kind of warping, which is really good. So that's my storage, I guess, in a nutshell there. Any questions so far about how to store reeds, about my specific solution or anything like that? Feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll circle back around and answer that. Okay, on to the fun stuff. So I figured today what we could do is we could walk through kind of my break-in procedure for breaking in reeds. Reeds are a living thing. They're made out of organic material, specifically cane. And as such, they react to the environment, and they also wear out. So breaking in your reeds is a way to just sort of gently work them into your reed rotation in such a way that you get a really high quality reed that lasts you a long time. I find that when I'm good about doing my reed breaking, that I end up with reeds that can last a couple months. And I play pretty frequently. I've even had a few golden boys here and there that have lasted 3 or 4 months. And it's always a shame to see them go. But breaking in a reed will help extend the life of that reed, and ultimately could also save you some money, because let's be honest, reeds are not cheap, especially when you get into like tenor saxophone reeds, when they come like 5 to a box and it's still like $40. It's like, oh my gosh. So what we'll do is I've already got one reed, I think, right here. I opened it up yesterday just to kind of get it started, and then I'm also going to open up a fresh one so that I can kind of show you how that process works. And I'm going to need this. All right, so before I begin, let me just say one thing. This is just one way to break in reeds. There are many different things. If it's something that you're looking to really get into and figure out what works best for you, I encourage doing a YouTube search. There's lots of great videos where people describe their own break-in process. So let's go through mine real quick. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do when I open up a new reed is I'm going to start labeling it, right? So let's see, today is the 5th. So I'm going to just write the date that I opened it directly onto that little plastic sleeve. So there we go, February 5th. Now I know exactly when I opened it. So if I ever pull out a reed and it says, July, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know what happened. That one just gets thrown out, right? That way I know exactly how long that reed has been opened up. The next thing I'll do is a pretty awesome tip I actually got from Dr. Stephen Page at UT. He has a video on YouTube, and what he does is he puts a little, I don't know if you can see that or not, there's a little dot on the very end of the reed right here. And every time he's, when he's breaking in his reeds, he just puts another little dot on there. So it's already got one dot on it. So I'm going to just put one more dot right there. So now it's got 2 dots. I know that this is the second day I've been working on this one. This one I just opened has no dots. So I'm just going to put one little right there. So now I know that this is on day 1. All right, there we go. So now I've labeled my reeds. I know exactly what day it's been opened. I know how many days it's gone through. It is on the break in process. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak them. So I have here a glass of filtered water. Depending on what area you're in, you might have really good tap water. You might not. I don't trust my tap water, especially with my reeds. I'm just going to soak them because they're not broken in, and really only going to keep them in there probably a few seconds, maybe 10 or 15 seconds, just so that they can soak in a little bit of that water, help it loosen up just a little bit. Yeah, while it does that, I'm going to go ahead and get my neck here because I'm about to assemble. All right. So let's see here. Try to kind of dry those off real quick. All right, and I'm going to start with this one. It's got 2 dots. We're on day 2. So now that I've soaked it a little bit and I've labeled it appropriately, now I'm going to play it. This is where things can get a little dicey. If you're like me, maybe you like to throw on a reed and just go for it. I try to keep myself from doing that, but sometimes I like to just play. When you first get that reed on and you're doing the break-in process, I encourage you to be very moderate with your playing. It's kind of like a shoe. Like when you get that new shoe and it fits really great, but it kind of still feels a little uncomfortable because it's stiff. The reed is going to be the same way. So when I'm doing this break-in process, unless it's on like day 4 or 5, I'm not going to play super low or super high. I'm also not going to play super loud or super soft. I'm just going to play about a medium mezzo forte. Usually what I do is I do like one long tone exercise and then I'll do some kind of technical thing. So I'll just do a quick octave exercise. What I'm doing right now is I'm just checking to see how the reed feels. Does it feel like it's going to be a good reed? Does it already feel too soft or too hard? I'm just trying to note any kind of idiosyncrasies that the reed might have. So I'll just do a quick octave exercise just to check those things. Yeah, so that reed is definitely not broken in. Definitely still feels a little tough. The next thing I'm going to check is I'm just going to do a little pattern and just check to see if there are any notes that kind of pop out or not. I want my reeds to give me a sound that's going to be pretty similar from low to high. So I want notes that are right next to each other to essentially sound the same. Sometimes you'll get a reed that has, I don't know if you've ever been playing and you feel like one note is just like popping out no matter what you do. Sometimes it's a reed thing. So I've had reeds that you'll be playing through a scale and all of a sudden G is just like super responsive and then A is a little stuffy. In those cases, I usually just toss those reeds out. So let's see what we got. Yeah, so I mean, all those notes to me sound like they have a similar timbre. It's not the sound I want because the reed isn't broken in. It's still a little stuffy, but I'm not noticing that any of these notes that are right next to each other, sound like very different from each other. So that's a pretty well balanced reed. I'm going to keep working on it, and I'm going to put that one back in its little sleeve. Got one more here. I'm going to do the same thing, right? So the first exercise I'm going to play is just a long tone exercise. And again, I'm just checking to see if there's anything weird with the response. I want to be sure that any read that I'm going to take the time to break in is going to be a good one. So let's see what we got. Interesting. So, no, obviously I'm not going to go much lower than that because again, we're just breaking in the read. We don't want to go to the extreme lows, extreme highs. This read to me feels much more responsive than the one I just played on, which is interesting because the other one's already been out of the box. So yeah, so very responsive. Obviously still a little bit reedy because it's freshly out of the package. I'm going to do my other technical exercise real quick and just check the timbre of my notes. Yeah. Interesting. That one I am noticing a little bit from when I go from E to F sharp. That F sharp kind of pops out. That's weird. Oh, that fixed it. Okay. Yeah, okay, so that was just a read placement thing. All right, good. Yeah, so again, it's just the first day, for that read anyway. It can be kind of hard to tell on day one. Usually by the time you get to day 4 or 5 on that read, that's when you're starting to get a really good picture of, if you've got a good one, if you've got an okay one, or maybe not a great one. Okay, so I've done my playing on those reads for today. Notice that it was like not very long at all. Yeah, that's the whole point of breaking in reads. So that the read that's about to be on day 3. Next time I play it, I'll probably play on it a little bit longer, start going higher, lower, the further into the breaking in process I get, the more kind of work I'm going to make that read do. Okay, good. So the other thing I want to point out is that when I feel like a read is finally broken in, that's when I give it a number. So you can see on the bottom right here it says 5. The number is super helpful no matter how many reads that you have out, because it's just a great way to keep track of what read you're currently on. I recommend rotating your reads, and don't go by day. Like some students like to go, oh, this is my Monday read, this is my Tuesday read. But if you say you play in band rehearsal and then you go home to practice, well, that's 2 different sessions. So I like to go by numbers, and every time I go to play, I switch to the next number. So I think I played on 4 yesterday. So I actually am on 5 today. But I don't put that number on it until the read is broken in. Right now I have 10 reads that I'm rotating through. For those of us who are in college and hopefully practicing an hour and a half or more per day, looking at you saxophone students, ... 10 is a really healthy number for read rotation. It also gives you more options in case your reads have a bad day. If you're in if you're in a different place, if you're in like high school, junior high, something like that, I would say 4 is good. So if you have students later on and you're teaching private lessons, don't kick in the door and be like, all right, you have to have 10 reads out at all time. 4 is going to be plenty for them. Yeah, good. So that's my read break-in process. Any questions about that? Because I kind of like sped through it and there was a lot of information there. Feel free to ask a question in the chat or unmute if you would like to. Do I have a particular brand of reeds that I like? Yes, I do. For my alto playing, I like the Van Doren V12. So the silver package. I used to be on the blue box, but I like the V12s a little bit better. For soprano, I'm still rocking the Van Doren Blue Box Life for my soprano reeds. For tenor, these are all my classical reeds, by the way. For tenor, I like the V21s with the setup that I have right here. So yeah, Van Doren is really good. D'Addario also has the D'Addario Reserves, which are really good. I got these for tenor just to try them out, but I really should have gotten a 3.5. So actually, if anybody needs some tenor saxophone reeds, size 3, they're free to a good home because I just want to get rid of them. So yeah, D'Addario Reserves are really great reeds. Van Doren also has like a slew of jazz reeds, which are cut slightly differently, which would work very well. I don't do a whole lot of clarinet playing, so I'm sure that Van Doren has really great Van Doren has really great clarinet reeds as well. Okay, let's see. Professor Padilla asks, do I recommend the same process for all reed instruments, and am I aware if double reeds do this as well? I do recommend this process for single reed instruments, so clarinet as well, because essentially it's the same thing. It's a cane reed. It's cut very, very similarly. For double reeds, I'm honestly not totally sure if they do a break-in or not, but double reeds are crazy. They make their own reeds often, and they have a whole process. My wife plays bassoon, and I remember her process to make a double reed was like, I mean, it was like weeks at a time. So I don't know that they would necessarily break their reeds in. They would just make them so that they can just play, and if they need to adjust them, they would. That's an interesting question, though. I'm probably going to ask her that over dinner tonight. I'll get back to you. Okay, another question here. When do I decide that it is time to get rid of an old reed? Very good. That actually is a great segue into the last thing I wanted to talk about today, which is reed care. I should say reed care and reed adjustment. So there's a few different things. Maybe you've been in a situation like this before. You've got a reed, you've been going through your rotation, you know that this particular reed is one of your good ones. You put it on to play, and it just doesn't sound like it normally does. To me, when that happens, I say, okay, I put it away, and I'm going to try it again tomorrow. If tomorrow it's still like that, that's when I'm going to start thinking about, okay, well, is this something I can adjust, or is this something that I should just get rid of? And there are adjustments you can do to try to extend the life of your reeds. Some people like to they go all out on adjusting their reeds, and that's fine if you know what you're doing. I'm not super confident in my ability to improve on a reed necessarily unless it's bad. So I usually use reed adjustment as a last-ditch effort to kind of extend the life of a really good reed. So let's talk about some things that can't be adjusted. If you have a chipped reed, game over. The reed vibrates against your mouthpiece, and it forms a very specific seal when it does that. If there's a chip in that reed, now you've got air leaking through the reed, and you're going to get a fuzzy sound. Sometimes you can adjust the reed like differently on the mouthpiece to kind of like, if you're in the moment, you're like literally in a performance and your reed chips, you might be able to salvage the performance that way. But once that reed's chipped, it's pretty much done. Other things you can't adjust. If your reed is split down the middle, toss it. It's done. There's one other thing. I just feel like I have to say this every time I talk about reeds. If you have a moldy reed, please just throw it away. I don't care how good it sounds. That's just gross. As an example here, if you're taking really good care of your reeds and you're not exposing them to the elements, I mean, you should be able to keep basically an immaculate reed, right? So this reed that I just took out of the sleeve is actually from September. So yeah, it's probably on its way out. I haven't gotten to it yet in my rotation. But what I want to show you is it basically looks new. Very, very clean. Yeah? If you open up your reed and it's moldy, just throw it away. Just throw it away. You can't get rid of the mold. And if you wouldn't eat a moldy sandwich, then you probably shouldn't play on a moldy reed. Okay. So let's talk about how we can adjust some adjustments that we can make on reeds. I'm gonna find one of my older reeds in here because I'm sure it's probably not in super great shape. Let's see. Oh wow. Here's another one from September 22nd. Okay. I have this nifty little thing right here called a Reed Geek. Reed Geek. What this is it's essentially just this block of metal that's been laser cut very, very fine. So the edge is actually really quite, I don't want to say sharp in terms of like cutting you. It's sharp enough to work on the reed, but it's not sharp enough to actually, cut your finger, which is great because if you end up traveling on an airplane, they don't really like it when you take a reed knife on the plane. So, but this, they're just like, oh, it's just a block of metal. Sure, take it. So the great thing about it is because the corners are so fine, you can actually use that to work on the reed. There's really two basic adjustments I want to go through today. And the first one is working on the back of the reed. So like the table, sometimes people call that the table of the reed. So specifically to answer your question about like when do I decide it's time to get rid of an old reed, if it's not playing well and I do some adjustment and it's still not playing well and a couple days go by and it's still not playing well, then I know it's done, right? So one quick way to check the table of this reed is just to lay it flat on a surface like this and just kind of poke at it on either side. If it's sitting flat, it shouldn't do this. Like it shouldn't rock back and forth. You probably can't see this because it's probably really small on your screen, but this one actually is rocking a lot. So what that tells me is that this surface is not perfectly flat. When this surface isn't perfectly flat, it's not going to sit flat against the mouthpiece, and then you're going to have some tone issues. So what I'm going to do is take this Reed Geek and I'm going to lay it against the edge of this reed, and I'm just going to scrape that way. And it's actually kind of dense, so what it's going to do is it's going to take some of it off. I don't know if you can see or not, the little dust of the reed on there, but there's some dust right here and there's some right here, but there's not any in the middle because it's taking just that first layer off. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can probably see that. Yeah, so that's telling me that the middle of the reed, it was kind of like caving in. All right, so I would do that, and then I would play on it a little bit, and I would see if it feels better. It might, and then I might adjust it again if it's still not playing and responding the way that I think it should. I will say, just as as a precaution here, it's kind of like cutting hair. Like, so you probably noticed I only scraped like 3 times, right? You can always take it off. You can always take more reed off, but you can't put it back on, right? So you don't want to give your reed a bad haircut. You just want to take off a little bit, test. If it's still bad, a little bit more, test. So that's the first adjustment you can make. If you don't want to get a Reed Geek, which I understand because I want to say that they're like $80. They're not cheap. If you don't want to get this, you can go to a hardware store and get fine grit sandpaper. I would say either 800 grit or 1000 grit. Really, really fine. If you're using sandpaper, I'll just use a paper towel because that's what I have laying right here. If you're going to use sandpaper, you would just lay it flat and you would kind of do this with the reed. And that sandpaper would just take a little bit off. And again, you wouldn't go like, okay, for 10 minutes, because then you're not going to have a reed left. You would do it probably like 3 or 4 times, and then you would test. If it's still not responding, then again, test until it's working well. So that's the first adjustment I wanted to show you. The second one is a little technical, but essentially there is what's called the heart of the reed. And the heart of the reed is kind of this shadowy area. It almost comes up almost like a triangle right here. So the middle, the bulgy part right here is the heart, but then it thins out and it thins out until it gets to the tip. Sometimes, just based on the way the reed is or the way it's been cut, sometimes that triangle isn't really like this. Sometimes it's more like that or like that, and it's not perfectly even. If you've got a reed with you right now, what you can do is you can hold it up to the light and you will see the shadow of that heart, of that sort of point. This one does actually look a little unbalanced. It looks like there's a little bit more shadow on this side as opposed to this side. So then what I would do is I would very carefully take this part of my Reed Geek, which is, I don't know if you can see it or not, it's kind of beveled right there. I would take that, and because there's more on this side, right? Nope, it was the other side. Because there's more on this side, I would just, again, just like 1 or 2 scrapes, very gently. You can see it took off a little bit right there. I don't know if you can see, yeah. And then I would play, try it again, play, try it again. What you'll find is that if it is unbalanced, if there is more shadow on one side versus the other, you'll find that the reed, in some registers, that it responds really well, and others it doesn't. Or you might feel like you may even feel that like one side of the reed just feels stuffy, if you're paying close attention. In some cases, if you're low, this is more for saxophone, I think, than clarinet. But if your low notes are like extra hard to play, you could even take the that beveled edge and you could scrape right here on the reed, just kind of closer to the plastic part. And again, just taking off a little bit, and that kind of thins it out. It'll give you a little bit thinner sound, but hopefully those low notes might respond a little better. So let's check on that table again. Let's see. Yeah, still rocking a little bit on that side. That side's better. So I'm going to scrape it one more time. Yeah, still a little bit. Honestly, since this is from September, I might just throw it away anyway, because now I'm taking off a lot of reed. Yeah, it's a little better. I would have to play it to know if I've just ruined it or not. But yeah, so I'll put that back in there, and I will definitely check it at a later time. Yeah, so those are just a couple adjustments. There are other adjustments that you can use with your reeds to make them, play a little better. Try to extend the life of a reed that maybe is on its way out. Tom asked, have I tried reinvigoration with hydrogen peroxide? I have not, but I did try reed storage in Listerine at one point. So it was, what was it? I think it was 2 parts distilled water and 1 part Listerine. And I noticed that when I did that, the reed never warped because it was constantly in 100% humidity. It was in water. I will say, though, that method of reed storage I ultimately did not go with because, first of all, it was a little messy, and secondly, my reeds lasted like a week and a half max because they were constantly waterlogged. So they died very quickly, and I didn't really appreciate that. So no, I've never tried to reinvigorate my reeds with hydrogen peroxide. But if you are kind of a germaphobe, I've definitely seen videos where you can actually, if you can submerge your reed in hydrogen peroxide and water, just as a way to kind of keep it cleaner in case you're worried about, especially in these times. That probably would be a good thing for me to do. But anyway, yeah. So any other questions about reed adjustment or reed storage or any other such things, I guess.
How do you know when the reed is ready for like, a 2-3 hour practice session?
Okay, I would say that if you are going to do a 2 to 3 hour practice session, that you should rotate within the session, and you should also take a break at some point for your face. um, yeah, I've been there, done that. There was I remember one Saturday from grad school, because I had literally the next week I had 6 or 7 performances over 5 days between my recital, other students' recitals, band concerts, blah blah blah. Um, and I was not happy with where my music was. So I remember this specific Saturday because I literally practiced for 12 hours that day. Um, and I also remember that Sunday, the next day, because I couldn't play the next day. I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, within that practice session, I rotated reeds probably 4 or 5 times because I didn't want to wear out my reeds. Um, so yeah, so if you're gonna do a mega practice session like that, I'd recommend maybe breaking it in half, giving yourself a 20-minute break in between, and rotating your reeds so that you don't wear them out. Tom says if the reed dies because dried saliva is embedded in the fiber, the hydrogen peroxide could clean it. Yeah, that's true. So when we play, our lip does shed onto the reed, which is partly why when you're putting when you're putting your reeds away, it's a good idea to kind of like wipe them off because you're not just getting saliva off of it, you're also getting skin cells from your lips off of the reed as well. Yeah, the hydrogen peroxide is a great way to clean your reed, definitely. Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Or maybe any situations that you've found with your reeds that you would like some advice with? Going once, going twice. Sold to nobody. All right, cool. Well, if that's it, then we should probably call it for today. Mark says he wishes I was. Hey, you know what? You wish you were as organized as me, but like, look at the bookshelf back there. Okay, that's not organized. Yeah, working on it though. Tom says discuss reed mouthpiece matching, as in using different reeds on different mouthpieces. I assume that's what you mean by that. Yeah, so so earlier I showed you my reeds. I have V12s for alto and V21s for tenor. The reason for that is because I use a different mouthpiece on tenor than I do on alto. On alto, I use a Selmer Concept. On tenor, I use a D'Addario Reserve. And the V12s just didn't work very well. The tenor V12s it was too much. It was very stuffy and hard to play. So I went through a bunch of different reeds, and I found that that the V21 worked better on that mouthpiece. Yeah, and clarifying here, mouthpiece opening versus reed stiffness. Yeah, so the measurement of mouthpiece opening, the tip opening, so the tip of the mouthpiece to the tip of the reed. The wider that tip opening is, generally the softer a reed you're going to want, because remember that the reed creates the vibration by hitting the mouthpiece. So if that reed starts further away, it needs to be more flexible so that it can get all the way up to that mouthpiece. So if you're playing on a more open mouthpiece, you're definitely going to need a softer reed. And if you're playing on a mouthpiece tip opening that's smaller, then maybe going up a size in strength might help, or up half a size could help give you a more even tone, something that's easier to control. Yeah, those are all great questions. Cool. Well, it's just about time to go. I've got about 30 seconds till my next private lesson. So I will go ahead and call it there. If anybody else has any questions, I'm going to leave my email in the chat. If you want to ask any further questions regarding reads or read care, feel free to email me there. I'm happy to take a minute and just let you know my thoughts on any questions you have. Okay? All right, cool. All right, well, that's pretty much it for today. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.